3 months ago, my boss leaned across the table, smirking like he owned my future. "You'll never make it without me, Daniel," he said. I laughed, on the inside. Out loud, I just nodded, because the truth was, he'd already started erasing me. My name vanished from projects I'd built. Meetings happened without me, and whispers trailed me down every hallway. But here's the thing about being underestimated. You get to work in the shadows. And in the shadows, I was building something he'd never see coming. By the time he realized, the game was already over, and I was holding all the cards. When Green Tech first reached out to me, it felt like a coronation. They didn't just want an engineer. They wanted me. The guy who could build an AI security platform that would outpace anything else on the market. My first week, I walked through the glass doors and into a storm of congratulations. Cameras flashed at the welcome party. Someone filmed me talking to a junior developer, and within a day, the clip was everywhere on TikTok, captioned, "A boss who actually cares." The comments poured in, painting me as some rare unicorn of a manager. I didn't know it then, but that video would become the first weapon used against me. At home, my wife, Claire, kept her smile polite, but her eyes worried. One night, she leaned against the kitchen counter, watching me type at the dining table long after midnight. "You're slipping away from us," she said softly. "It's like you're here, but not." I told her this was just the startup grind, that it would calm down once the launch was over. But part of me knew I was lying. Green Tech's expectations were a hungry fire, and I was feeding it with hours I didn't have to spare. 3 weeks in, I found the first crack in the facade. Buried deep in a test data set for our AI detection system was a set of synthetic images, so perfect they bypassed every security layer. They weren't just random. They were deep fakes, weaponized to look like real political figures in compromising situations. The realization made my skin crawl. If this system went live as is, it could topple reputations in seconds, all while claiming algorithmic certainty. That night, as I sat alone in my office, my monitor flickered. A black text box appeared over my code editor. "Don't let them know you saw this." No sender, no signature. Just a warning that felt less like advice and more like a countdown. I swiveled in my chair, scanning the empty floor. The cleaning crew hadn't even arrived yet. I shut down my system, but the message was already burned into my mind. The next morning, Robert Greene himself swept into the weekly stand-up, a smile carved into his face like it was part of his branding. "Daniel," he said, "we've decided to have the strategic meeting without you this week. Nothing personal, just some executive-level stuff." I felt the sting immediately. That meeting was about the product roadmap, the very thing I was building. It wasn't an oversight. It was exclusion, plain and sharp. By lunch, the internal company newsletter had a feature on Project Sentinel, my project, crediting Robert for innovative leadership and technical vision. My name wasn't even in the footnotes. When I opened the link, a chat notification popped up. It was from Marcus, a developer I'd mentored for 2 years. He sent nothing but a pair of eyes and the article link. Before I could type a reply, his profile icon grayed out. I checked the directory. Marcus had blocked me. Late that afternoon, I passed Robert's office. His door was slightly ajar. Inside, he leaned toward his assistant, voice low but smug. "He's digging his own grave," Robert murmured. The assistant chuckled. My chest tightened. There was no mistaking who he was. I took the long way back to my desk, every step echoing in the corridor. It wasn't just a political maneuver. This was a purge. They were setting me up for something, and I didn't yet know what. By the time I got home, the sunset had already given way to darkness. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and called upstairs to my daughter Ellie. She came running down, clutching a crayon drawing of our family. I told my teacher, my dad builds robots that keep people safe, she said, grinning. For the first time all day, I felt my voice warm. That's exactly right, I told her, hugging her tight. Claire watched us from the doorway, her expression caught between pride and worry. She didn't have to say it, I already knew. Whatever storm was brewing at Green Tech, it wasn't going to stop at my desk. And somewhere, in the shadows of that company, someone was counting on me to stay blind. The problem was, I'd already seen too much. It started with a late-night code audit. Something I told myself I was doing out of professional diligence, but deep down, I knew it was about more than that. Buried in a hidden directory of our secure server was a batch of AI-generated images I'd never seen before. The metadata tags were scrambled, almost deliberately obfuscated, but the faces, I recognized them. One in particular stood out, Senator Caldwell, a well-known advocate for stricter AI regulations. In the images, he appeared in compromising scenarios, manufactured scandals so convincing they would survive any surface-level verification. It wasn't a security glitch. This was intentional. Someone had fed the system politically charged data, teaching it not just to detect deepfakes, but to create them. I dug deeper, tracing the commit history. The changes had been pushed from an encrypted admin account, one reserved for the highest level of access. The username was a string of meaningless characters, but the IP log told a different story. It routed back to Robert Greene's executive terminal. My pulse thudded in my ears. Robert wasn't just stealing credit. He was weaponizing the very thing I had built to protect people. But there was another layer I hadn't expected. The deeper I traced, the more I saw cross-referenced files and encrypted correspondence routed through offshore servers. There was a second name buried in the chain, a name I didn't recognize, but one linked to multiple shell corporations and political donations. Whoever they were, they outranked Robert. He was just the front. As I sat there, the office nearly silent, except for the faint hum of the HVAC, my screen went black. For a heartbeat, I thought the system had crashed. Then a single line of white text appeared on a gray background. "We're watching you." No sender, no header, just those 3 words, pulsing faintly as if alive. I logged off immediately, shoved my laptop into my bag, and left. The hallway outside felt narrower than usual, every shadow a little too deep. The next day, I tried to mask the tension at home. Ellie was at the kitchen table, surrounded by colored paper, glue, and scissors. "Want to help me, Dad?" she asked. I sat beside her, folding paper carefully into the shapes she showed me. "We're making a robot," she explained, "but it has to be nice." I smiled and told her, "Robots are only as good as the heart of the person controlling them." She nodded seriously, as if I'd given her a secret worth keeping. Back at the office, I knew I couldn't just sit on what I'd found. I spent my lunch break writing a small piece of code, barely 100 lines, that would serve as a backdoor into our system. It would record and copy every suspicious file, every unauthorized access attempt, and store them in a secure offline repository only I could reach. Installing it was risky, but I'd already crossed the line from employee to silent observer. 2 nights later, I got my first ping. A secure message appeared in an encrypted chat client I didn't recognize. "We know what you're trying to do. We want in." It came from a user calling themselves Glass Mask. Their opening line cut straight to the point. They were part of a white hat hacker collective that had been tracking GreenTech's activities for months. Their goal wasn't just to expose Robert, it was to dismantle the network behind him. I was skeptical until Glass Mask sent me a compressed folder. Inside were logs, emails, and internal memos that matched my own discoveries, but dated years before I'd joined. They had history, they had reach, and they had their own vendetta. Robert had once orchestrated the firing of one of their members, destroying his career in the process. That member was Glass Mask. Working with them would mean going to war against forces I couldn't even see. It would also mean I wouldn't be fighting alone. I told them I needed time. That night, the decision was made for me. I woke at 2:13 a.m. to the faint blue glow of my laptop screen across the room. I hadn't touched it since leaving the office. As I crossed the floor, words appeared, letter by letter, as if typed by invisible hands. "Time's up." I stood there in the dark, my own reflection staring back from the screen. Whoever was pulling the strings had decided the game was moving to the next stage. The summons came in the form of a terse calendar invite. All hands meeting, mandatory attendance. No agenda, no context, just the CEO's initials at the bottom. By the time I stepped into the auditorium, the atmosphere was tight, like static before a storm. Robert stood center stage, his suit a shade too sharp, his smile just a little too rehearsed. "Colleagues," he began, his voice echoing off the high ceiling. "It's come to my attention that certain members of our team have been engaging in activities that compromise the integrity of GreenTech." His eyes scanned the crowd, then locked on me. "Daniel Miller has been accessing restricted systems, extracting sensitive files, and jeopardizing our relationships with high-level partners. This is unacceptable." Gasps rippled through the room. My pulse slowed, the way it does right before a fight. He wasn't just accusing me. He was laying the groundwork for my public execution. But then, something unexpected happened. Halfway through his speech, a faint vibration in my pocket signaled a message from Glass Mask. "Check the live stream." I glanced at my phone. The meeting was being broadcast in real time, not on our secure internal network, but on an open platform with tens of thousands of viewers. The comment section was a wildfire, half the audience accusing me of betrayal, the other half demanding proof, pushing hashtags like "Justice for Daniel" into the trending column. Robert had no idea. As he continued his performance, a voice from the back cut through the tension. "I know the truth." A young analyst, maybe mid-20s, stood up, trembling, but loud enough to carry over the PA system. "He's not the one stealing from us." Before he could finish, 2 security guards rushed in, grabbing him by the arms and hauling him toward the exit. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Check the archives! Look at—" The doors slammed shut, cutting him off. For a moment, Robert's composure faltered. Then he doubled down, painting me as the rogue element in an otherwise pristine company. I didn't speak. There was nothing I could say in that room that would matter, not when the verdict had already been decided. When the meeting finally ended, I walked out into the late afternoon sun and kept going until I reached the far end of the parking lot. I sat on the curb, elbows on my knees, staring at the asphalt. My phone buzzed. It was Claire. Just 2 words. You okay? I typed back, not yet, then stopped, deleting the words before sending. Instead, I sent a single period. She'd know. By nightfall, my course was clear. I booted up my home terminal, bypassing my usual security protocols and tunneling into the back door I'd planted weeks earlier. Every suspicious file, every unauthorized transfer, every shred of manipulated data I'd collected, compressed into a single, untraceable package. I attached it to 2 outgoing transmissions. The first went to the Bureau of Cybercrime, addressed to a contact whose trust I'd earned years ago. The second went to a YouTuber known as Signal Flare, a name whispered in tech circles for their exposés on corporate misconduct. They had a reputation for forensic-level accuracy and for making their targets bleed in the court of public opinion. It wasn't until I hit send that Glass Mask messaged me. Do you know who that is? I didn't. Then they sent a link. It was an old Green Tech press photo from 6 years ago. Standing in the back row was a younger version of Signal Flare. No camera, no persona, just another employee. The caption read, Systems Engineer, Alex Rowe. Alex had worked under Robert. The articles I found next told the rest. Fired under fabricated charges of data manipulation, blacklisted in the industry, vanishing from the corporate world entirely, until resurfacing as a ghost with a camera and a mission. If anyone had a personal stake in taking Robert down, it was Alex. Minutes later, I got an encrypted confirmation from Alex. Got it. Dropping in 72 hours. I almost typed make it sooner, but stopped myself. Timing was everything, and they knew the battlefield better than I did. Then came the micro cliffhanger I didn't expect. Alex sent a follow-up. We're releasing it on the 12th. My fingers paused over the keyboard. The 12th. Ellie's birthday. For a long time, I just sat there, the glow of the monitor painting the room in cold light. If the drop went as planned, the fallout would be immediate. I could picture it. The shockwaves tearing through Green Tech, the headlines, the public outrage. But I also imagined Ellie's face, the way she'd light up when she saw the cake, the candles. What if that moment was overshadowed by my war? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Was this still about justice? Or had I crossed into something darker, about proving Robert wrong, about winning at any cost? I thought about my conversation with Ellie over the paper robot, about the line I'd given her. Robots are only as good as the heart of the person controlling them. What about people? I closed the laptop. For the first time in weeks, I let the silence sit. There was no undoing what I'd set in motion. In 72 hours, the truth would be out there, and it wouldn't belong to me anymore. Somewhere in the city, Robert was probably celebrating his victory, unaware that the match had already been lit beneath his feet. And somewhere else, Alex Rowe was queuing up the file that would burn it all down. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. The drop hit like a lightning strike. At 9 gonk a.m., sharp, Signal Flare's video went live. 32 minutes of damning evidence, complete with screen captures of manipulated data sets, financial transfers routed through offshore accounts, and internal memos bearing Robert's signature. The edit was surgical. Calm narration over devastating visuals, ending with a single, loaded sentence. What you're looking at isn't a mistake. It's a strategy. Within an hour, the video had climbed into the global trending list. By noon, It was the #1 topic on YouTube and Twitter. Hashtags multiplying like sparks from a fire. Justice for Daniel. Green tech scandal. Deepfake gate. News anchors spoke my name with a mixture of scandal and intrigue. My inbox, dormant for weeks, exploded with messages, some supportive, some venomous, all urgent. Then came the twist no one saw coming. An account with no followers and no history dropped a grainy, handheld clip onto the same thread where the video was circulating. In it, Robert sat in what looked like a private lounge, drink in hand, speaking to someone off camera. His words were slurred, but clear enough. Everything was my idea. The AI, the political play, it's all me. They wouldn't have the guts without me. The internet devoured it. Memes sprang up overnight. Journalists froze the video at keyframes, dissecting every expression. Suddenly, Robert wasn't just implicated, he was confessing. Whether the clip was leaked by an insider or stolen outright didn't matter. The perception was set. By mid-afternoon, I was copied on a leaked internal email chain from Green Tech's crisis team. The subject line read, "Urgent control loss." The body was worse. "We've lost narrative control. External partners are reconsidering. Prepare for full damage containment." The weight of it all pressed against my chest. But life outside the storm still demanded attention. That evening, I drove my mother to her medical checkup. She watched me from the passenger seat, her hands folded over her purse. "Your father fought his battles too," she said quietly. "But he gave up when it got too hard. You didn't." There was no pride in her tone, just a sober acknowledgement of the cost. Back in the city, the cost was being tallied in real time. By the next morning, Green Tech's biggest partner announced they were terminating their contract, citing ethical concerns. The stock price began its freefall. 5% in the first hour, 12% by the closing bell. News tickers treated it like a countdown to annihilation. Employees began posting cryptic updates on LinkedIn, testing the waters for new jobs. The board scrambled to project stability, but rumors of an internal coup spread quickly. That's when the second twist emerged. A Bloomberg article, citing anonymous sources, reported that a multinational conglomerate, one with its own history of swallowing distressed companies, was in talks to acquire Green Tech at a fire sale price. It wasn't hard to guess why. This wasn't a rescue. It was a hostile takeover, dressed in the language of strategic restructuring. Whoever orchestrated it saw an opportunity in the chaos. I read the article twice, my mind catching on one sentence. Negotiations are being conducted with the knowledge of the current CEO. Was Robert complicit? Was he selling the wreckage for his own benefit? The question lingered as evening settled in. I'd just sat down with a cup of coffee when a sharp, deliberate knock echoed through the house. 3 slow raps that seemed to carry a weight of their own. Claire froze in the kitchen doorway, eyes narrowing. I rose, crossing the hallway to the front door. Through the frosted glass, I could see the silhouette of a man in a suit, broad-shouldered and still as a statue. I opened the door. Robert Greene stood there, hands clasped in front of him, his face pale but composed. The streetlight caught in his eyes, making them look almost hollow. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled. Not the confident camera-ready grin I'd seen 100 times, but something tighter, almost desperate. "We need to talk," he said. Robert stepped into my living room, as if he'd crossed into enemy territory. He didn't sit until I gestured toward the armchair across from me. Claire had taken Ellie upstairs, the sound of their footsteps fading, leaving the air heavy with unsaid words. "I'm not here to threaten you," he began, voice low. "I'm here because I have no one else left." It was almost laughable. The man who'd gutted my career was now speaking like a castaway. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a response. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You think I'm the top of the chain? I'm not. I've been a mouthpiece, a figurehead. Every move I've made, every order I've given, it's all come from higher up." I studied his face. There was no swagger now, only exhaustion. "Higher up?" I repeated. "You mean the board?" He shook his head. "The board takes orders too. There's a network. Financial. Political. They control multiple companies, shape policy, push technology where they want it. Green tech was just one of their tools." I wanted to dismiss it as a desperate man's excuse, but his next words cut through me. "The head of that network, he's someone you've met." Robert paused, watching my reaction. "A decade ago, you interviewed at Aegis Systems. You didn't get the job. Do you remember who turned you down?" I did. His name was Victor Kane. The memory came back in sharp detail. The crisp suit, the calculated politeness, the way he'd told me I wasn't ready for the responsibilities, despite my perfect qualifications. Robert's mouth twisted into something between a grimace and a smirk. Victor Kane is the one pulling the strings, and right now, he thinks you're just a nuisance. But if we act fast, we could become something else entirely, a problem he can't ignore. The room seemed smaller, the walls pressing in. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Do you want to bring down the whole empire?" For a moment, I didn't answer. My eyes drifted to the mantel, where a framed photo of Claire and Ellie sat. The three of us, smiling on a beach vacation, before green tech had even been on my radar. I thought about the storm I'd already brought into their lives, about the possibility of walking away now, finding quiet, building something new elsewhere. But the quiet wouldn't last. Men like Kane didn't stop because you ignored them. When I looked back at Robert, my answer was in my eyes. The alliance formed faster than I expected. Within 48 hours, I was back in contact with Glassmask, who looped in 2 investigative journalists from major outlets and a retired federal cybercrime agent who'd worked on dismantling organized corporate rings. Surprisingly, Robert brought in 2 high-ranking executives from other tech firms, people he claimed were disillusioned with Kane's control. We called ourselves, half-jokingly, the Shadow Council. Our plan was simple in theory, dangerous in execution. Compile enough interconnected evidence to expose the network's full operations, not just green tech's crimes, but the money laundering, the political bribes, the manipulation of public policy through covert tech deployments. The kind of evidence that, once public, couldn't be spun or buried. The first step was tracing financial flows. Robert still had partial access to green tech's back channels. Combined with my backdoor and the hackers' infiltration tools, we began mapping the web. Offshore accounts in the Caymans, holding companies in Luxembourg, shell corporations in Panama. Kane's name never appeared, but his lieutenant's signatures were everywhere. We were making progress when the 10th twist hit. One of the executives Robert had brought in, a polished, sharp-eyed woman named Evelyn Ross, wasn't what she seemed. Glassmask caught her trying to extract our compiled data during a late-night session, routing it to an unknown server. The IP traced back to one of Kane's subsidiaries. When confronted, Evelyn didn't even flinch. "I told Kane you'd try something like this," she said coolly. "He wanted me to keep you close. And now I know exactly how far you've gotten." Before she could leave, the retired agent stepped in, cutting off her access and physically escorting her out. But the damage was done. Kane knew we were moving against him. The pace accelerated. We encrypted and mirrored our files across multiple hidden nodes, ensuring that if one of us went dark, the evidence would survive. Every time I closed my laptop, I half expected to find my apartment door kicked in. 3 weeks into the operation, the final piece fell into place. A ledger tying a series of covert political donations directly to the deployment of AI-driven disinformation campaigns. It was the kind of smoking gun that could level an empire. We compiled the package. Alex Rowe, Signal Flare, agreed to coordinate the release with the journalists and the agent's contacts in federal law enforcement. The drop would happen in 48 hours. That's when the last message came in. It was an unmarked email, routed through at least a dozen anonymizers. No greeting, no signature, just a single line. "When you release this, you won't just burn Kane. You'll burn everyone tied to him, guilty or not. Families, careers, people who don't even know they're part of the game." I sat back in my chair, the cursor blinking at the end of that sentence like a heartbeat. Outside, the city hummed, as if nothing was about to change. Upstairs, I could hear Ellie laughing at something Claire said. The cursor blinked again. And for the first time since this began, I wasn't sure if I was ready to see it stop. The fallout from the Kane dossier was brutal and immediate. Federal investigations launched within days. Asset freezes rippled through offshore accounts, and boardrooms across 3 continents went silent under legal gag orders. For me, the storm ended not with a bang, but with an email. A small, ethics-driven startup called Lumencore reached out. They wanted me to lead their AI safety division. Their pitch was simple: no manipulation, no hidden agendas, just technology built for transparency and public good. I said yes before the ink on my green tech settlement was even dry. When I walked into Lumencore's converted warehouse office for the first time, I recognized 2 faces instantly. Former green tech engineers I thought had disappeared from the industry. They smiled, one of them saying, "We started this because we needed a place people like us could work without compromise." It hit me like a delayed twist. This wasn't just a new chapter. This was a sanctuary built by the survivors of Robert's reign. 3 weeks in, my phone buzzed with an international number. A calm voice introduced themselves from the United Nations, inviting me to join a panel on AI ethics and global safety standards. I didn't answer right away. The idea of stepping back into a spotlight, even for a good cause, made my chest tighten. The next morning, I walked Ellie to school. She clung to my hand at the gate, her backpack almost bigger than she was. "You're staying for the assembly, right?" she asked. I smiled. "Wouldn't miss it." Standing in the sun, surrounded by parents and teachers, I realized it was the first time in years I'd been fully present for a moment like this. Back in the wider world, green tech didn't die. It transformed. The company restructured under new leadership, abandoning its more toxic projects. And Robert, the last I heard, he was volunteering at a community center, teaching coding to teenagers. Whether it was penance or reinvention, I didn't know. One evening, After Ellie had gone to bed, I was reviewing a policy draft for the UN when a new email landed in my inbox. No subject line, no sender ID. The body contained just 6 words. Are you ready for round 2? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't know if it was a warning, a threat, or an invitation. I shut the laptop and climbed the stairs. Ellie was asleep, one arm draped over her stuffed rabbit. I sat on the edge of her bed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'll always choose what's right, I whispered, even if it costs me everything. Somewhere out there, another storm was gathering, but for now, the house was quiet, and I intended to keep it that way, at least until the next knock came.